Sorry, a few more seconds. Okay, we are live.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. The meeting is now streaming on Facebook, and so I will call us to order. So for today's meeting agenda, we have a full agenda. We're hoping to get a couple things done. First of all, Ms. Fong, would you help with the roll call?
Yes. First, we have Chair Victoria Keener,
Present.
Vice Chair Rosario Allegado,
Present.
Commissioner Bettina,
I'm here.
Commissioner McKenna. She sent a note that she will not be available for this meeting. Commissioner Fletcher.
Here.
Okay. We have 4 out of 5 commissioners. We have quorum.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 26th, so our last month meeting. Did everyone get a chance to look over the minutes, and does anybody have any corrections? Nothing, no comments? Okay. If there are no objections, then we will pass the meeting minutes as attached to this agenda. All right. So the meeting minutes from October 26th are approved. I see that Josh is going to be a little bit late today. So we will fit him back into the meeting schedule when he shows up, so he can provide a report on the activities of the CCSR office. And so we will skip this agenda item number 4 for now and come back to it when Josh shows up for the update. Agenda item number 5 is communications and correspondence from the public. And I see that we have one new piece of correspondence that I just got a minute before the meeting started from Dr. Tawn Keeney, who is also at the on this Zoom call at the meeting today, and he was inquiring about the piece of correspondence that we got from him last month for the commission meeting, which we did acknowledge. Sorry, I'm just reading over it right now. So Dr. Keeney's correspondence has a lot to do with air emissions from air travel and tourism, which I mainly see as a state, something from state jurisdiction rather than city jurisdiction. But I would like to open the floor to comments from the commissioners about that piece of or that letter that came through last commission meeting, if there are any comments from commissioners, and then we can open it for discussion. Rosie?
Well, I just wanted to note, because in the message, I also just got it right before the meeting. It did ask if we read what was sent in previously. I certainly did, and I believe came to a similar conclusion that transportation falls under the state DOT. However, obviously the impacts of it do impact the city and county of Honolulu, because we do have a lot of air travel centered here. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I read it, and I acknowledge that these impacts are things that we have to consider, but may not be within the jurisdiction of our city and county climate change commission.
Thank you, Rosie. Bettina or Chep?
No,
I'm fine.
I'm
I agree with that. Sorry.
sorry, Bettina. I don't have a copy of the letter, so
Wynn, could you resend out the letter from last month to Chip? Thank you. So at least Rosie and I definitely, oh, I see Henry as well. So why don't we open it to comments from the public at this point?
Henry Curtis with Life of the Land. This is a city issue to the point that the city aggressively markets Hawaii as a tourism site, and that the city is therefore increasing the number of tourists who arrive by airplane, and therefore that makes it a city issue, at least at some level.
Thanks for your comment, Henry. So one way that I think the city can acknowledge this type of impact from travel and tourism is through some of the adaptation working group activities that have just started. So, you know, this is looking at actual adaptation to different impacts of climate change on different sectors and things that can be done. So while we may not have any regulatory power over things like that, we can react with adaptation. But now I'd like to, I see Ton is here as well. In addition to any other members of the public who'd like to make any comment on this, would you like to say anything, Dr. Keeney?
Thank you. Well, yes, my interest would be in presenting a proposal, possibly even in the form of legislation to, on the state level, possibly into legislature for progressive defunding of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. The implications of that probably would not resolve the problem of climate change inequity arising from our burden of tourism here, but because I think clearly the visitor industry would assume the great bulk of advertising to bring those tourists, probably maybe even in similar numbers to what they're being arrival figures now. So I'm not sure how much of an impact this would actually have if it was something that went before legislature, but I think if that were the case, I would hope that possibly the Climate Change Commission from the city and county could weigh in on a proposal, possibly in the form of well, some kind of commentary or testimony in regards to the scientific validity of the conclusions that I've drawn in this paper. I'd be happy to read the summary. It takes about 4 minutes read, but I'm not sure that that's what you need at this point. So.
Chip, I saw that you had your hand up.
yeah. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Oh, very good. Thanks, Chip.
I recall reading this now, and am I correct in remembering that your calculations end up with one round trip to Hawaii basically burns up an individual's entire carbon budget for the year?
I calculated 1.8 tons of carbon equivalent emissions by a round trip to Hawaii, and the carbon budget, I believe, calculated by the IPCC is 2.3 tons. equitable emissions until averaged over a period until 2050, wherein we would hope that all carbon emissions would cease. So it's not quite for the individual flying, but the import of this paper was that the 1.4 million residents of Hawaii are responsible for the 18 million tons of carbon emissions yearly that are emitted by flying visitors to and from Hawaii. And therefore, that means that each Hawaii resident would have 13 tons of emissions responsibility in addition to their own 2.3 equitable emissions. And therefore, essentially, they would be using the equivalent of 6 world individuals, for their yearly carbon budget. And to me, this is way beyond anything that could be considered equitable.
So I think this is incredibly important data, and I want to thank you for providing it. I think that we can do a lot with this. With regard to defunding the Tourism Authority, I haven't had a lot of chance to discuss this with people or put deep thought into it, but initially I would propose a different approach. Use the HTA and the legislature to move us over the course of, say, a decade or a decade and a half towards hydrogen fueled long distance air transport. There are some impressive research results, and I believe there may be craft that are actually flying, but not commercially, that are fueled by hydrogen that could make the long trip from the continents to Hawaii. And I also have heard that within a year, and that was a year ago, COVID, I'm sure, slowed things down, that we could have electrical inter-island air transport, aviation, powered by battery. So instead of defunding HTA, let's push them towards emphasizing renewable energy aviation, and make that an important part of achieving carbon neutrality for the state as a whole, and not just in the power sector, which is where our carbon neutrality law is currently focused, only in the
Chip,
power.
I'm gonna bust in a little bit so we can move on, but thank you for your thoughts, and thank you, Ton, for your calculations and looking into that as well. And I do want to note that a couple things relevant to this and to the commission as we move forward. So something that we have talked about on the commission is doing a tourism guidance document, looking at the impacts of climate change on different sectors and the tourism industry. It's kind of on our list of to-dos for future guidance documents and analysis. And these types of calculations are definitely something that can factor into that in the future. So as we get that on the agenda in the future, this is definitely something that we can bring back up and potentially bring you back in to talk about as we get that on our agenda. I would also
Chair,
yes.
One quick question. Do you all remain when the new mayor comes in?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know that we do remain.
We each have terms of when we come on and when we come off. So I believe I'm on until 2023. I think Chip is on until 2022.
I just got renewed.
Oh, you just got renewed. Okay, yeah. So we're all on here for a while.
we have rolling terms.
Excellent.
But the other thing I wanted to mention, Ton, and with respect to your letter, is that if you haven't already, you might want to connect with the state level Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission and the coordinator of that commission, who is Anu Hittle. And her last name is Hittle, Hittle. And so she might be someone that would be relevant at that state level and someone you might want to talk to.
Thank you.
And are there any other comments from the public on this agenda item? Great. And I don't think when is Josh here yet? Nope, not yet. All right, well then we will move on to the next agenda item and hopefully we can get that done before too long. So when Josh comes in for his update. And so item number 6 on the agenda is discussion and action on Bill 65 testimony. And so if everyone will recall, we had voted to submit a letter supporting the inclusion of, or supporting Bill 65, specifically the inclusion of the One Water framework. And we had also discussed, and Rachel just put in a link to the Bill 65 draft. Thanks, Rachel. And so the last thing that happened with respect to Bill 65 was that we had, I think we just heard CD in CD1, or are we in CD2 now? 1. So they're about to hear CD2, but in CD1, the details with respect to the One Water framework implementation had been reduced quite a bit, and a lot of the detail about implementation and how that One Water framework would take effect and integrate the different city departments was cut from the document. And so our draft letter talks a lot about reintegrating a lot of those details and the importance of including kind of the One Water framework at a more detailed level, so it is able to be implemented, and the benefits of the One Water framework in integrating the different departments across the city. So should I share my screen, or should someone? Let's see, I'll share my screen with the draft so that if there are any comments or changes that we want to make on this letter, can get it in. Can everyone see that okay? Okay. So basically, this is in support of the intent of Bill 65 and requesting that the detailed One Water framework language be reinserted. Because of the timing of the committee hearings, we have to, if we want to submit this letter officially, we have to take action on it today, and it would be submitted before, I believe, tomorrow morning. So in this first paragraph, this large paragraph here, we do a brief description of the importance of One Water, where it comes from. We reference the white paper prepared by One World, One Water for the city and for Board of Water Supply, some benefits of the One Water approach, and why we want those details in there. And then after that, there are a couple examples provided of case studies of where One Water has been implemented in different cities. So Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, and Miami-Dade County. and some of the kinds of outcomes from implementation of those one water frameworks. And so, kind of pointing to this kind of framework is non-duplicative in terms of the city's agencies, and that detailed implementation can integrate the departments in beneficial ways and cause these types of outcomes that we've seen in other cities. So looking at integrated planning horizons and departments in LA, the San Francisco creation of the Public Utilities Commission, introducing One Water, some educational outcomes. In Austin, they used it to put their climate change adaptation and resilience framework out there with a 100-year outlook time. And also in Miami-Dade, the integrated water utility management. So looking at water and sewer integration, wastewater and potable water. And so in the end, we in this letter are urging the city to reintegrate those detailed considerations of the One Water framework in the bill. Are there any comments from the commission on any of these frameworks or details?
Yeah, Vicki.
Mm-hmm.
Were any reasons given as to why it was dropped?
Yeah, I wrote them down last time. I believe there was concern that there were already offices that focused on this type of integration. Can anyone remind me if I'm misremembering? I think that Josh filled us in on that last time.
Which, if that's the Board of Water Supply, they're the ones behind the One Water approach. So
yeah, it was not a comment from Board of Water Supply. I can't remember who or what group it was that had comments that this was duplicative. But our comments are basically, go ahead.
What I was saying is that if a third party indicated that it was duplicative because there are departments that already deal with this, it's the Board of Water Supply that deals with this and is the champion for One Water. So,
right.
Is public allowed in this point, or are you guys just commission? I could share or address Chips.
Yeah, that would be great if you could jump in. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Kristen Reynolds with One World, One Water. And I didn't hear everything firsthand. Josh represented it last meeting, but I recall there were some concerns with the intention of Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency doing implementation, which is not what was, I think that might have been a misread of the language. Their role really is coordination in this, not implementation. But I think because the words implementation are in here, there were some concerns about the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency implementing things that are actually the responsibility of the line agencies like Board of Water Supply, ENV, and those sort of things. But yeah, Chip, it doesn't seem to be a real concern in the intention of what it's trying to do, but more of a communications and sort through that. So I think they're working on that. We'll see with CD2.
Yeah, so hopefully if we submitted this, just putting in our from the commission our take on how important it is to support the One Water framework and have those details in there, then that would just be another reason for those details to reappear back in CD2.
If I could add to that, good morning. I don't know if you can hear me, but this is Barry Lusagawa, Board of Water.
Hi, Barry. Yeah, hi. I can't see you. Sorry, I'm dealing with a lot of screens.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. I'd like to add to what Kristen was saying. Yeah, it was the kind of a pushback from the business community on the authority of OCCSR as established. Well, they interpreted how it's established in the charter language, but Josh was able to explain that they are a coordinating role and have done made a lot of progress on climate adaptation and mitigation, as you folks know. So they came up with a CD1 version that basically turned it into a policy document with no action or implementation. Since then, I think a lot of the testimony, a majority of the testimony has been to restore the original specific language because it needs to be specific in order to be action oriented. And so I think the committee is moving that way, but we'll see when at the second budget committee meeting. I think it wasn't really duplication, to me that it's helping the line agencies drive towards climate adaptation. The office, I think, knows that they don't have the resources to actually do the work, but the infrastructure agencies need that kind of collaboration, that kind of leadership. So it's working collaboratively, not really having the authority to tell the agencies what to do. But that was one of the interpretations from the business community. Sort of an overreach kind of point. I'm probably saying too much, but that I think we embrace OCCSR's help and leadership on this with the city resilience team. We've done a lot through the working together with various city agencies. So it's just extending that same process moving forward. It's not a negative thing. I see it as a very positive to put back that specific language. So I appreciate the commission's support on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. So given that, I think that I focused more on the integration in the letter, in the testimony. But helping, let's see. No, I talk about collaboration too here. Okay, so are there any comments, other comments from the public or the commission on things that we want to include or remove from the testimony? Or do you want to see anything else on the screen? Scroll up or down anymore?
There's a comment from Laura Mole in the chat, Victoria.
Oh. Where does chat go when I'm sharing my screen? Oh, I'm missing stuff. Okay. At the council hearing, Linda Schatz testified as a nonprofit developer that she felt the original language would create an overreach on the part of CCSR's charter defined responsibilities. Okay, so that's what we're hearing from folks saying that that implementation, that people were concerned about the implementation, potential overreach. And so it's a matter of perhaps putting language in the bill that would make it clear that it's about integration and coordination as opposed to implementation and not having the overreach from the defined responsibilities, which I don't think is inconsistent with our testimony and letter. Any other comments from the commission? All right, if there are no other comments or edits to the testimony, I guess this is where we would, can I get a motion to approve? Do we have to do this again, since we voted on it before?
Yeah, we do. Motion to approve or accept the testimony that we just drafted.
So moved.
Right, can I get a second?
I second.
All in favor for approving the Bill 65 testimony for submission to the City Council?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, that is all in favor, no opposed, and one commissioner absent. So with that, it is passed, and we will finish editing and get this in a form to submit before the committee meeting tomorrow. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the discussion and action on the social equity guidance document. But before we move on to that, has Josh appeared for that agenda item yet?
Hi, Josh said he will be available in a couple of minutes to jump on.
Okay, maybe we should wait for him before going on to before we go into the equity guidance document. Because that might take a little bit. Let's see. We could skip forward ahead again. So leave number 4 and leave number 7 on the agenda for now and move to item 8, public input for matters not on the agenda. So are there any public at the meeting today who would like to offer comments for matters not on the agenda? Feel free to throw up your hand in the video or in the interface or put something in the chat box. I'm not seeing anything coming up. Matt.
I wanted to offer a point of clarification for something that I said at the previous meeting regarding representation on the community advisory HUI for the climate adaptation strategy. At the last meeting, I mentioned that no other entity or organization had more than one representative. I misspoke. There is one other entity, and it is the, let me make sure I get the name correct. Hawaii Youth Climate Coalition. It was intentional to overrepresent from the younger population as participation on the advisory HUI. They are represented by 2 members.
Thanks for that clarification, Matt. That's actually great to hear from some of the equity listening sessions that we held. I know that there was a lot of concern that that there wasn't enough youth representation on a lot of these issues. So good for you guys trying to get more representation on that. Josh here yet? I'm trying to take up another couple minutes so we don't get into the big social equity document and miss that agenda item.
He said he is trying to sign on.
Okay, great. And I will delay for another minute while he is trying to sign on. So after Josh's update, we will go back to agenda item 7, discussion and action on the social equity guidance document. So commissioners, if you don't have that open, there was a link sent out earlier, but maybe Rachel or Layla, you could put the link back in the chat box again so everybody can look over the draft document. Oh, Rachel's on it. So make sure and have that open. And the things that you may have not seen before on that include the focus group section and the revised recommendations and key findings. Oh, and here's Josh. Now I can stop delaying, and why don't we go back to agenda item number 4, the report on the activities of the CCSR, and we can hear from Josh.
Thanks, Chair Keener and members of the commission. I'm sorry for being hung up in another meeting, and sorry for if you can hear noise behind me in a room with others on a call. Just wanted to bring you up to speed on, I know we've been updated on the work of the climate adaptation strategy work that Matt Gonzer and his unit have been doing in the community during this unusual time, trying to reach out online and bring voices into the conversation there. Assume that you've had an update in that space. Obviously, a lot of work with different policies going on right now. Bill 65, which has been modified to some degree and would codify the duties and responsibilities of the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency, is being heard by Budget Committee this week. Continue to advocate for a more robust version of that bill. Bill 2, which is the parking bill, the land use ordinance change after 30 years of not having an update, again, has been modified substantially compared to the initial version that the administration had proposed that had some pretty innovative ways of tackling, sort of urban transportation policy and making sure that there's more affordability and climate emissions reductions around our parking and transportation system. That has been modified significantly now and looks like it's losing a lot of the components that we're going to help benefit on the climate emissions side and on the affordability side. That is up for hearing this week as well. And then just continuing to work on the CARES and sort of economic recovery piece for the city, and trying to incorporate where we can work around empowering communities and make sure that there's long-term sustainable solutions with the CARES funding through the Office of Economic Revitalization, which has done some really innovative work around workforce training and making sure that workers can pivot to a new economy, especially with the community college and University of Hawaii training to different branches than just tourism, which looks like it's going to take a while to come back. So those are the main items, but happy to take any questions from the commission members.
Thanks, Josh. So just FYI, you missed our discussion of the testimony we're going to submit in support of Bill 65. Specifically, we are concentrating on putting in the detailed language back in to support the One Water framework and the importance of that language in acting to foster collaboration between the offices, add capacity, and integrate a lot of the climate adaptation work. And so we passed that, and we'll be submitting that before the next committee meeting. I'm also excited just by
great. That sounds good, and I hope that other staff and folks were able to answer any questions that you might have had about that. I think we might have talked about this last time, but it really does point out the difficulties that current city organizational systems have with dealing with a multi-pronged issue like climate change. Climate change doesn't stay in silos, and so it's it's really difficult for us to ask city departments, you know, budgeting decisions and all that to stay in silos as well, because if you don't have sort of a holistic approach to climate, especially around adaptation, it really just ends up wasting resources and time. And so these are conversations that not just the city and county of Honolulu are having, but you know, cities and counties all across the country. Is how do we make governmental systems more systematic about approaching these sort of multi-pronged problems? Thanks.
Thank you. I had a question about you said that Bill 2 was losing some language about the housing affordability and energy energy language. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, so the initial version of Bill 2 had essentially a modernization which allowed for getting rid of parking minimums, which means, you know, instead of telling you know, housing developers and builders how much parking they had to have per unit, it was more of a liberalizing of those rules to say, well, you know, let's let the market, you know, dictate, let them decide how much to put, not put minimums there. Because what we're seeing right now, frankly, is like, if you look at millennials and Generation Z, like not getting driver's licenses in the same way, not buying cars in the same volume at all. And so the idea would be, and the original version unbundled the parking from the actual ownership of a unit. So if you bought a unit and you didn't want to have a car, you don't have a car, you shouldn't be forced to purchase a spot that can cost up to $50,000 to build, that adds on to the cost of the unit. And that, you know, if you do need a spot, you could actually just basically rent that or lease that from a centralized pool. And if you needed 3 spots because you happen to have 3 cars as your family, you wouldn't be limited to the 1 or 2 spots tied to your apartment. You'd actually be able to, you know, lease or rent additional stalls. So this is something that's other cities are doing, sort of modernizing their parking. And that component has been taken out. The current version that is before council essentially removes all of the stuff, you know, whether it was increased setbacks, areas for tree planting along roads that would increase the sort of the, you know, make for a better pedestrian experience, making sure that the parking lots don't go right up to the street. The parking lots were set behind buildings, so it would make for a more walkable community. Those elements have all been removed from the current version of the bill. And so it is from the climate change front, certainly is a weaker version, but I think also ultimately from an affordability front, it doesn't achieve the gains that we were initially, I think, that had been envisioned by the bill. There are still some good components of the bill. You know, reducing the parking minimums is certainly helpful, because at least then parking can be right-sized. I think most of the issues are around the sort of walkability of communities and making sure that they're, you know, you're not having to pass dark parking structures in the middle of the night when you're walking from place to place, so that it's actually active space.
Thank you, Director Stanbro. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners about Josh's update? If there's nothing else from the commissioners, are there any comments from the public with respect to this agenda item? Not seeing anything pop up. Just pipe up if I'm missing you. Also, Chip just dropped in the chat a link to a talk about the issue of tourism and economic diversification that might be relevant to the letter and information that we were talking about earlier from Ton Keeney. So there's a link to a talk that he said you might be interested in there. All right, so if there are not any other comments, thank you, Director Stanbro, for your update. And we will go, sure, thanks. And we'll go on, skip back over to agenda item number 7, the discussion and action on the climate change and social equity guidance document. So for this, I'm going to share my screen again. Bring up equity document. Let me bring up the chat as well, just in case things pop up there. Okay, so with the climate change and equity document, there are a couple things that have been modified since the commission last saw the draft. So here's the overall, so everyone has a copy of this open on their screen probably as well. But there is an overall table of contents, since there were a lot of subsections that that appeared throughout the guidance document. And we've arranged all of the appendices to kind of go in a from smallest to largest scale of other equity recommendations from various reports from kind of city and community to global levels for references, so people can check those out. But the key findings remain pretty similar to what they were the last time that everybody saw them. We have changed the recommendations slightly. So there are 5 main recommendations. And those are they're fairly similar to what they were last time, but we have modified them, tweaked them, refined them a little bit based on what we heard from both a bunch of people who helped review the document, as well as our focus group that we held last month. So the recommendations still include centering social equity in all climate change adaptation and mitigation plans, identifying frontline communities in the county that will be or are currently experiencing chronic stressors in relation to climate-induced shocks, to review the city's resilience strategy to determine areas that include equity and where additional focus in that document on equity is still needed, to collaborate with communities to share resources about risks, needs, and abilities to adapt to climate change, and to focus on outreach to underserved communities through expanding accessible options, and to provide information in preferred formats and languages according to the appropriateness of the community that we're dealing with. Excuse me. So overall, are there any comments on those main recommendations from the commission? Yep.
I don't understand the language in number 2, chronic stressors in relation to climate-induced shocks.
So if you, I mean, you're of course familiar with the climate stressors and shocks language and that we've used before. So that is saying what types of chronic stressors already exist in frontline communities that are going to make them more impacted by shocks. Is there something you would want to change in that wording that makes it unclear?
Maybe what you just said is a more clear statement of what it means.
Okay, let me just make a comment too.
Let's see, identify frontline communities that potentially have are or will be experiencing chronic stressors that could worsen the impact of climate change induced shocks. I like the way you draw both of those in together, stressors and shocks. I don't think we've done that in a white paper before. I mean, in the context of stressors decrease our resiliency in the face of shocks, and that the two are closely linked that way. I feel like we've sort of always separated them out into two different bins.
Right.
Vicky, I want to note that there's a comment in the chat from Nancy McPherson, and I'm supportive of that language.
All right, sorry. With the sharing screen, my windows are disappearing all over. DHHL would like to suggest adding the following language under recommendations or elsewhere. The Office of Climate Change will regularly consult with DHHL and OHA, given the potential as agencies to greatly expand the opportunity to collaborate with and effectively conduct outreach with our underserved Native communities. I definitely support that addition. Thank you for that comment, Nancy.
Could that be made two-way? Or is it already two-way?
You mean, can we also offer them consultation? Because the way that it says is that we will consult with them, but maybe they should also come and see us as well to provide information.
Yeah, just considering the restricted resources that everybody's experiencing.
I don't know if we can fiat that, but we can make it known that we'd be happy to provide expertise.
I mean, it's a recommendation that would go in this paper.
Yeah, maybe a recommendation is, well, I think that we should keep this specific one and then, yeah.
Yeah, we could expand on it underneath it, for instance.
Yeah.
Victoria?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Nancy?
We could make it a little more sort of generic sounding, that consultation between, you know, OCCSR and, you know, state agencies concerned with the welfare of underserved Native communities such as DHHL and OHA, you know, make it a little bit broader. And I apologize for not getting to you this to you sooner. So I appreciate being willing to incorporate it.
No, I think it's a very important point and something that we do focus on in a lot of these recommendations from the guidance documents is language that support city agencies in getting the resources they need and to do this type of work and to include already existing communication. All right, so we can put in, do we think that we would need a new recommendation or that it could fit under?
I was thinking 1.2.5, kind of appending it onto 1.2.5.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Okay, thank you for that, Nancy. Something else in this document that we've talked about before is the Climate Change Commission pledge towards equity. And this is something that we've presented before and gotten some limited feedback on from folks looking at it. But part of what we thought was something different to do in this guidance document from the other guidance documents that we've done is create a pledge for us to take as a commission, which acknowledges that climate change is at its core a economic, social, or socioeconomic issue as well as an environmental issue, and that we acknowledge the need to understand the different ways people are vulnerable to the consequence of climate change events by virtue of a bunch of different factors, location, livelihoods, assets, historical context, social positioning, and that we as a commission pledge to explore to what extent climate change mitigation or adaptation strategies offer opportunities to promote wider societal development equitable objectives. And so there are 3 bullet points down there that kind of get a little bit more specific in terms of the pledge. So some of them are more relevant, of course, to when we meet in person, but we're going to assume that someday that will happen again. So we pledge to hold the meetings in different areas of the island and invite leaders of communities and underrepresented communities, especially from those different parts of the islands, to participate and present at our commission meetings. That we pledge to integrate social equity considerations into all of our publications and policy. So have that as a background to everything that we do, and to provide diverse platforms and opportunities for participation in these meetings and in the work that we do. So that could include things like having virtual meetings, which of course we're now doing all the time, having focus groups such as the one we did for soliciting input on this guidance document, doing things like surveys when we need more input from communities, field trips if needed to better understand a problem, or presentations and prioritizing communities or groups that have historically been marginalized or underrepresented in city decision-making processes.
Victoria, can I suggest a minor change? In the first bullet, that first sub bullet point, instead of underrepresented communities, I suggest changing that to minoritized communities.
Minoritized.
Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to bring attention to something that Henry Curtis put in the chat regarding the concept of renewable energy is potentially, well, he makes the assertion that it's a political definition, but I'm going to just broadly interpret that renewable energy is something that can be contextual and changes in time and place. So implying that renewable energy means decreased greenhouse gas emissions might not always be the case.
We could say decarbonized.
Sorry, what specific sentence or area in the paper is this in relation to?
There are 6 references to renewable energy within the paper, but no reference anywhere that renewable energy means decarbonization or decreased greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, I got it.
Maybe we need a definitions section like they do at the legislature with bills.
All right, so I will go through and look at that in terms of the energy, renewable energy as defined throughout this paper. Thanks for that, Henry. Are there any comments from the commission on the pledge, since we will be signing this and taking this read it over carefully and give me any more comments. Chip?
The last sentence of the paragraph, the full paragraph. As Oahu plans for climate change impacts, we explore to what extent may mitigation.
Yep.
So we explore to what extent mitigation or adaptation strategies may offer.
Yep.
Okay. Opportunities simultaneously to promote wider societal development objectives. Do we want to say we will explore?
We'll explore to what extent mitigation or adaptation strategies may offer about simultaneous opportunities. Right, does that make more sense to promote wider societal development objectives? Anything else on the pledge?
I was wondering, do we want to say we will explore? Am I hard to hear?
No, I got you, Chip. Sorry, did I think I put that here, right? We will explore.
Oh, I wasn't watching, okay.
Yep, I'm on it.
Yeah, simultaneous looks good to me.
Okay. Other parts in the paper, so that the organization has changed a little, and I think it reads a lot more smoothly now. And I really like the way that it has developed. So all of these are basically the same, talking about what social equity is, the different types of equity, vulnerability as defined in a lot of these documents, looking at the issue of social equity in mitigation and adaptation policies. So this is more of a general look at it. And then this table 1 looks at a bunch of different strategies that are found in all of these reports and organizes them from most common to least common in all these different reports. So the kinds of strategies that can be used in adaptation and mitigation planning. So that's kind of the literature review part of it. Then we get into the local context, so Hawaii and Oahu specifically. So local statistics about how climate and equity interact here, how we identify frontline communities in Oahu. And a lot of these have been elaborated on since the last time you guys saw the guidance document. And if there are comments that you have on any of this as we're looking through it, please speak up.
Can I ask a general question?
Yep.
So we have Kahuku Wind, we have the Waimanalo Ballpark, we have growing numbers of examples where communities are being told rather than asked. And is there language in here to suggest that the historical model of external advice should really be replaced by a model focused on community ownership?
So community ownership rather than top-down.
Yeah. Top-down or just external. I mean, the community ownership of well, specifically sea level rise, right? Sea level rise is the latest chapter in a long history of land dispossession, right? And so we have communities that that have experienced this, and for the state to come in and solve, quote unquote, solve the problem runs the risk of yet another government program dispossessing people of their lands.
Yeah, so we have this whole section with the very long title that I think is very important that Rosie and I workshopped for a while. The Indigenous Pacific Island communities are disproportionately impacted by climate change due to historical governance structures. So I think that kind of, this is that section that you're talking about. Rosie.
Yeah, I mean, I think though that we have to be a little bit more clear because the examples that Chip put in the beginning are not necessarily related to sea level rise, but I think he does raise an important point, and this kind of connects to what Henry Curtis had brought up earlier about renewable energy. And there are multiple examples. You know, I personally can think of geothermal in Puna as being conflicts between renewable energy. We also have other things that Henry Curtis has been involved in the Big Island having to do with some renewable or green energy kind of things that I won't bring up in detail. You know, you also have the idea of wind power on Molokai, but all the energy is going to Maui, and then they're being forced to buy back their own energy. You also have Kahuku. I mean, so I think you also have the question about OTEC development that has been developed and impact on, cultural issues. So there is actually, I mean, this is not something that we brought up, but I mean, the umbrella of renewable energy has not been equitable or kind to local communities. I'm not sure if that's something we directly want to address. Certainly you can draw an even larger systemic issue of that, which is kind of like, what is the spectrum of community participation in this? We know that there's a big difference between consultation and, Chip says ownership, but perhaps we want to talk about it in terms of the spectrum of community participation. There's a particularly good paper called The Ladder of Participation, and it actually defines what the different levels of engagement are in the community. I use it a lot in talking to my students about research, research on a community, research with a community, research for a community. And that also can translate to pretty much all aspects of community-based participation in governance as well. So, sorry, that's a mouthful, but just wanted to say that that's not something that we explicitly have in here, but if that might be something that in this discussion we find might be something important to address. And there are, like I said, many examples in Hawaii of renewable energy that has had negative impacts on marginalized communities.
I think that this issue has had a massively painful and growing impact. And that as we move forward with not just renewable energy or decarbonized energy, but attempts to adapt to climate change, there needs to be a new model of community engagement. Because I think the existing model is also continental based, and it's forced on us, and it doesn't really acknowledge or respect the history of engagement. And I think this document is an opportunity to say something about that, because this is a growing issue. It's not a sidelight issue. It's not a small issue. It's growing, and climate change is going to magnify it even further, and already is. So if we don't have that in here, and especially given Rosie's reference to the ladder of engagement or whatever that was, I mean, the fact that we have scholarly works on this issue, maybe there should be a section inserted in it. I don't want to slow down progress of the commission, but maybe next month would be a time to vote on it if this is still needed.
I think we have, I think it will be fairly easy to, I think this is important, and we have talked about it throughout the writing of this paper, like where to fit in these types of, that type of acknowledgement. And I think we could add a bullet point in this section. I'm kind of making some notes here to recognize those disproportionate impacts, specifically with renewable energy. and the recognition of the historical lack of I guess agency.
Rosie, what's another term for ownership? Origination or?
Governance.
That's so broad.
Well, I mean,
We-
I mean, when we talk about like co-management, right? Like, so, I mean, that's all on the spectrum, right? Is co-management, co-production, that's somewhere. And then, you have sovereignty over something, right? Because even the concept of ownership is a Western concept. If we are going to be thinking about kind of thinking beyond normal Western constructs. So
Okay.
ownership is a, like I said, ownership is a term that I think sidewalks well to what continental kind of views are, but yeah, I don't know.
My agency.
Responsibility.
Yeah, okay. Responsibility, agency, advocacy.
Right. Arnstein's ladder participation. Thank you, Nancy. That's the one.
Yeah, those are the terms.
Yeah.
Agency, right. Yes.
I think we can fit another couple sentences in this section, section 3.2, to encompass some of this. And with Henry's comments earlier on the recognition of renewable energy, not necessarily meaning what we say it to, that those will address some of these issues.
I think you might mean citizen control, Chip. That's like the most extreme in Arnstein's when she articulates it, and this comes from 1969. So I think, we have models in place, but we haven't maybe implemented them all. You know what I mean? The ones that have been recognized, right?
Okay. So amend it with that. We also added a short section referencing the forthcoming climate action plan and the participation that was solicited for input into the climate action plan, and the equity issues that came up and were repeatedly brought up during that process. And then the other new section that we added was kind of the results and themes that came out of the social equity focus group that we conducted last month, that I presented on last month to this commission with Lala, and help from the Climate Resilience and Equity Program within CCSR. And so this is what Lala and I told you about last month, and kind of the main themes that emerged from that, and how they relate to the potential findings of the guidance document, the major themes that came up there. And so we used a lot of those themes to integrate them into the reorganization of this document, as well as bring up some additions to the recommendation section and key findings, and flesh out the kind of local impact section that we just went through. Are there any comments on the social equity focus group findings section, or anything else that we've discussed up to this point? And again, thank you to Lala Nuss and her office for really helping us get this information and gather the working group together. It was very valuable. And it's something that I think that's reflected in the pledge now of, different ways of getting input into our guidance documents, are holding these types of kind of focused meetings with people. And I think are a good way of getting more input directly into these recommendations that go forward with our guidance. All right, lastly, we have a couple areas for further research that were identified. I know that Rosie, you had a couple points in there that we haven't worked in yet.
Lala had an additional comment to make, and I also wanted to note that Nancy in the chat had articulated some maybe kind of really nice language that Chip might be interested in.
I'll add that to my notes on this as well.
And then Lala, did you wanna comment?
Yes, aloha, aloha, good morning.
Morning, Lala.
Thank you so much for all the time and effort and intention put into this brief. As you know, my kuleana in running the Climate Resilience and Equity program is very much aligned with the Commissioner's endeavor with this brief, and grateful to have supported its final draft. And really appreciate the conversations being had regarding some specifics around community engagement and ownership. I would just like to add as well, as I continue to engage with communities around Oahu and different frontline community organizations and leaders, one of the things that keeps coming up is the importance of incorporating as well as investing further into the areas of the nexus points between Western science, as well as incorporating indigenous and ancestral knowledge, science, lived experiences, values, principles, and abilities into the city's adaptation and mitigation initiatives. I think that was touched upon a little bit, but just to drive home that point, nationally and globally, that climate change solutions are continually merging with other forms of sciences outside of our Western science formations, and that we would be doing ourselves here in Hawaii a disservice to not recognize and incorporate the Kanaka Maoli and indigenous abilities here as well. So I just wanted to mention that on record. Mahalo, really appreciate all the work being done here.
Mahalo for that comment, Lala. And I wonder if there is a good point where we could, that might be a further research note, do you think?
I feel like it would fit well in that area. That's something that is, I think, just starting to be explored further here in Hawaii officially.
Nexus between. Oh, the joy of typing live in front of everybody. All right, so that I will incorporate into a new bullet point, and I'll get in touch with you, Lala, if I have specifics on, kind of questions on exactly what the wording might be that we have to make sure to include to encompass a lot of the comments that you've already gotten from your work in the office. Okay, so finally, lastly is our conclusions and acknowledgements and appendix section. So in our conclusion, we take it back up to the IPCC 1.5 degree warming report to kind of look at issues of social justice acknowledged at that highest level of climate work, and acknowledging the work that's already being done within CCSR and the Equity and Resilience Program, and the importance of supporting that as we go forward and incorporating it to everything. And I think importantly, ending with this sentence that at times addressing equity issues means uncomfortable discussions around race, privilege, gender, property and land rights, access, and power. And so with that, the acknowledgement section, acknowledges a lot of the folks that were in all of the folks that were in the focus group that we got input from, and the CCSR, Lala and Michael for helping with arrange a lot of the focus group and facilitate it, and Rachel and Layla for their, especially Layla for their research assistance in getting this paper to where it is. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the appendices are a lot of kind of other frameworks used at different spatial scales for looking at climate and equity across both the US and the world. I see some other things coming in on the chat. I'm trying to keep abreast of everything here. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to get Nancy and Lala's language to fit into the findings and recommendations.
I think we should add Nancy into the acknowledgements when we get that done. Number one, and then also I want to note Aida added some additional references that kind of talk about the evolution and updating of the ladder participation model from Arnstein that we can kind of look to and consider adding to our references. And Chip noted key finding 2. Oh, is that wording? Is that wordsmithing, Chip? The key finding? Yep. Oh, okay.
Yep. So the key findings aren't numbered, they're bullet, they're
right.
But anyway, I'm proposing a new beginning to the second key finding.
Okay, let me get up there.
And I've used citizen ownership, but if you want to substitute something else, that's fine.
Okay, that gets us back down here. Okay. So we've made a lot of notes and amendments to the equity paper. Thank you, everybody. Before we do anything else, are there additional comments from the public on the social equity guidance document? I will.
Yes, Dave Rainey with the Sierra Club. I'm on the National Climate Adaptation and Restoration team. I'm very, very pleased with the thrust and the direction that you folks are providing with your document, because we've taken the same position with Sierra Club that it's all our adaptation and carbon dioxide reduction issue or adaptation strategies have to be subsumed within the social equity and justice framework. So very happy you folks are going that way. Also, I like the whole idea of collaboration or equal partnership between what you folks are doing and the frontline communities. And I like the idea of the commission going to the frontline communities instead of the classic model of everybody get your comments into downtown Honolulu. I mean, you look at today, Henry and I are on here, but where's the vast public? Well, most of them are working, the ones that are still have a job. But so yeah, the kind of outreach Lala in particular, I think has been doing, going to the communities and working with them on the hours that fit their schedules and things, it is very, very important. So yeah, overall, just very, very supportive of the direction you guys are going with the draft.
Thank you, Dave. Are there other comments from the public on the equity guidance document?
I think Chip had one more additional wordsmithing for recommendation 4.
Yeah, so that's a new beginning to Rec 4, and I'm
that
using
incorporates,
Nancy's language. Thank you, Nancy. And
I just entered in the chat that I do have a number of references to papers about Indigenous knowledge and climate change adaptation and resilience. If you're interested, I'd be happy to compile those and just send those to the commission as an FYI, as a resource to use however you'd like.
Yeah, if that's easy for you to do, Nancy, please don't take too much time on it. But if you have a couple of resources that would be really helpful, you think, for us to include, that would be great if you could send them along.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do believe that we have, I mean, this addresses social equity, and I do believe on our very long list of to-do lists for future guidance documents, we do intend to specifically get into the issue of Indigenous knowledge, and you know,
Right.
because we want to recognize that, you know, Hawaii is now becoming the home not only for, you know, the Kanaka Oiwi and Maoli, but now for Pacific Islanders who
Yes.
are being displaced. So yeah, we do intend to take that up. We do have a long list of other things, but when that time comes, and I think even in our education now, I think that would be extremely helpful. So please do send.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, of course. So this is the social equity guidance in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation policies, but we do definitely want to acknowledge the greater impacts on Indigenous populations and on these at the local scale. Are there other, sorry, I'm scrolling back and forth. Not seeing any more comments in the chat. Are there any more?
I've got one.
Oh, Chip. Yeah, sorry, you're a bit windy right now.
I've got one underway.
Okay.
I'll turn off my renewable power there.
So you're going to put it in the chat box?
Yes, I'm halfway through it. And
Okay. All right. Is there anything else from the public or from the commission with relationship to the equity guidance document?
So I'm not sure where to place this, but it might come under.
Might be the pledge.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I like that.
The commission, okay, I'll read it out loud. The commission supports a new model of community engagement that works more deeply with local communities to address site-specific climate mitigation and adaptation projects. Yeah, that'd be nice under the pledge.
I like the idea, but I don't know if I like more deeply. I know you're kind of trying to get with the community participation model there that we've been talking about, throwing a lot of words around.
Yeah, we could say more effectively, or maybe Rosie or Nancy has it, or someone else has better language.
Authentically? Just guessing. Sincerely?
No, everybody's sincere. It just
I like authentic. I like
little
meaningful.
competitive about it. That works towards a more collaborative,
Or just centers local communities' needs in addressing site-specific, you know, I like using the word centering because it centers them as opposed to centering. Yeah. We can wordsmith it in a little bit, but I think I like the general spirit of what Chip is articulated, and then maybe we can think a little bit.
All right, I'm putting all of this in here and we can wordsmith it. All right, so I don't see any more comments from either the public or the commission.
Bettina, do you have any comments on the document?
I have to say that this is an exceptionally written paper, and not that the others that we have, published to this point are not, but I have to say that this one I felt was truly exceptional. So I have nothing to express but support.
Thank you for that, Bettina. And I'd definitely like to acknowledge that this was a very collaborative group effort, but the brains and inspiration behind a lot of it as we went forward was Layla. So thank you very much, Layla, for your hard work and research on putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Layla.
With that, can I get a motion to adopt the climate change and social equity guidance document as amended today and to transmit it to the mayor and city council after that?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, so that is all in favor, no opposed, and one commissioner absent. And so with that, the paper is approved, and we are really looking forward to getting it in final fighting shape and getting it to the mayor and the city council. Thank you everyone for your hard work on this, and it's been a long time.
And many thanks to the assistants from outside the commission.
Yeah, really, our the community input, this would not be in its current incarnation without that. So, and mahalo to all the staff of the CCSR for working so, the OCCSR for being so amazing in everything that they do.
Agreed. All right, I'm stopping sharing this, and I will make sure and save that and get it back to Layla and Rachel so we can finish it up and get that wordsmithing done. Yay, that feels good. All right, so we already did public input for matters not on the agenda. Agenda item number 8. The next agenda item was our tentative next meeting date. Can someone remind me what that is?
It's December 8th.
December 8th. Do we have a time? Also 9:30?
I think it's actually a little later. Hold on, let me just check.
It's at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
4
p.m.
2 p.m. like Bettina said.
Okay, so December 8th, 2 p.m. is our next scheduled meeting. Hope to see everyone there again. Agenda item 10, are there any announcements? First from commissioners.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Leila for all the work that she's done for us. And I know that you're moving on to another position. And I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you have done and contributed. And I've learned so much from you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Layla.
Congratulations, Layla, and thank you. Anything else from commission, upcoming talks, conferences, events that wanted to make note of? All right, is there anything from the public, announcements for this commission or the group? Lots of congratulations rolling in for Layla. We'll really miss you on the commission. Chip?
There is a talk on Wednesday of this week at 10:30, hosted by Pictor. And it's folks from DPP talking about design guidelines and design options with regard to sea level rise. And they gave the same talk, or they gave a similar talk at the local chapter of architects meeting about 2 weeks ago. But it's at 10:30. PICTR is PICHTR. It's an acronym that I can't recall right now. I'll hunt it down and put the link in the chat.
All right, thanks, Chip.
Actually, I forgot one announcement that the 2020 Pacific Islands Climate Adaptation Science Summit is November 17th and 18th, and I'm putting the link in the chat. And I totally forgot that that was, I mean, I knew it was happening, I just disconnected it from today, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, that there'll be meetings and talks and about climate change.
Yep. And sorry, I should have mentioned that as well, since I'll be on one of those panels tomorrow. But I know that there are definitely going to be a lot of different, there'll both be like technical talks, and there will be different kinds of panels looking at collaboration and funding, and how the different groups that work on climate change adaptation and science in the region are working together. There was something, so Chip, I wanted to ask you, I know a while ago that you had brought up, you wanted on a future agenda an update on, was it CZM? CZM rules, or like there was some.
So Senate Bill 2060 was signed into law by the Governor's Act 16, I think it was. And it makes important changes to 205A, the CZM law.
Right, that's it.
So it'd be great if someone from the CZM program.
Right. So I want to bring that up. We've had pretty full agendas trying to get a lot of our guidance documents through and a lot of testimony. But I know that if we have time next month, I think that maybe trying to get someone from to give an update on 205A would be relevant. And I know that Bettina, we are going to put the construction document for action on next month's agenda,
Yep.
right?
Yep, that is done and ready to find a spot on the agenda. It'd be awesome.
Excellent.
To.
So you'll definitely be priority for next month's meeting. And thank you for your patience and understanding as we shuffle everything around to try and meet these different deadlines.
No, that's all okay. I just hate to follow the paper that we approved today. It was just beautifully done.
Thank you. And so with that, I think those are the only announcements I wanted to make about next month's agenda. Were there any other items, considering that we definitely want to do the construction document and potentially the 205A update from other commissioners? Or in CCSR, anything that you think we need to have on the agenda for next month that might be coming up? Not seeing anything, so that sounds good. I like a 2-item agenda. And Chip dropped the sea level rise webinar in or the PICTR event and a sea level rise design webinar in the chat. So I encourage everyone to click on those links if you're interested. And if there are no objections at this point, I move we adjourn.
I second.
Great. Well, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time.